What's going on YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the New York Rangers. There's a lot to get into. I have to redo this video for you guys because the Rangers did decide to part ways, mutual part ways, fire, whatever you want to say, for their head coach, Gerard Gallant. The New York Rangers are going to be going in a new direction going into this summer after a disappointing playoff run. The Rangers started off a really good season. They had a really good season throughout the year. Hopefully, the aspirations of winning a Stanley Cup for the first time in almost now 30 years. But unfortunately, those efforts came up short despite what they did at the deadline, bringing in some superstar talent, guys like Nico Mikkola. That's who you were thinking of, right? Of course, Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. So the Rangers really went all in it this year, and they really didn't get what they were looking for. Unfortunately, the Rangers did get bounced in the first round despite a 2-0 series lead. Coming back to Madison Square Garden, it almost looked like going into game 3 and 4, we might not see another game in Newark in this series for a game 5, the way the Rangers had played on the road. But then the goalie changed for the Devils, and just everything kind of fell apart for the Rangers. So we're going to take a look at the playoff series, of course, the coaching situation, as well as what I think is next for the New York Rangers. We're going to go over all of that today. So we're going to start off with the playoff series, right? Because that's how this whole thing kind of unfolded. So, obviously it was a good series. I predicted the Rangers to win this in 7 games. I gave the Devils the respect that they deserved. They're a really good hockey team. And I just thought the Rangers were going to have the experience to find a way to get it done. And we kind of saw that really isn't how things kind of unraveled. You have to kind of compartmentalize this series because the first 2 games, the Rangers were dominant. Absolutely dominant those first 2 games in Newark. And then the goalie change happened, a couple of line changes for the Devils and Lindy Ruff, and all of a sudden the Devils looked like a completely different animal at Madison Square Gardens for games 3 and 4. And that's kind of where the Rangers lost this series. They kind of had, their foot on the Devils' throat, per se, and they just weren't able to finish the job. They gave some belief to the Devils in game 3. They end up winning game 4 as well. And just like that, they're heading back to Newark, back with home ice advantage for game 5. And that's kind of how the story kind of unfolded. They lose games 3, 4, and 5. That's really tough to come back from. And now you've got to find a way to win 2 of those next 3 games. That's a difficult task. And unfortunately for the Rangers, it was just a little bit too little too late. Now, they did come back in game 6. They were able to find a way to win at Madison Square Garden their next time around, so they did end up getting a win at home. And then, of course, for game 7, there was a lot of build-up and hype around that game. It was the only game on tap that night. And unfortunately for the Rangers, they just really didn't show up. A really putrid game for the Rangers. The Devils just kind of ran the table on them in game 7. Rangers fans embarrassingly leaving the game early. It was a tough scene for the Rangers franchise and their fan base in game 7. So, kind of how I look at this, the criticism for this team can go a lot of different directions. But I do want to point out some positives before we get to the negatives. The positives are this team has a lot of young talent, both on offense and defense, that is going to help them moving forward. So it's not like, all right, well, we went for it this year and we're done. That is not the case for the New York Rangers. Now, in some regards, maybe, and we'll get to that in the negatives. But the positives, the kid line has been really good for the Rangers for a couple years now. They have Filipino locked up. They have Capo Caco locked up. They just got to figure out what's going to happen with Alexei Lafreniere. I do think they are going to try everything they can to keep Laf with the Rangers. That's a really good line, and I think that's a group that they want to keep together moving forward into next season. So keep an eye out for that. So that's a positive. Another positive is their defense. A lot of those younger kids we've started to see come into the Rangers organization. There's some questions about how good would a guy like Braden Schneider be. Of course, guys like Keandre Miller, And, definitely Keandre Miller, in terms of the younger guys, was definitely the standout. He's probably going to get a nice extension this summer as well, alongside Lafreniere. But, the Rangers really saw some improvement from some of those younger players, and that's a reason to be excited. Those guys are very good young players that the Rangers are going to need moving forward, especially with their current cap situation. They're going to need those guys to continue to play the way they have and continue their development. So, in that regard, and that's not even including some of the young guys that aren't on the Rangers yet. Up front, you have guys like Brennan Othmann who are in the system. He's playing in the OHL, so they'll probably see him maybe crack the lineup in the fall. So keep an eye on Brennan Othmann. On the back end, you still have guys like Ty Emberson, Matt Robertson. I'm forgetting one other defenseman, and you guys will let me know down below. But there's a third defenseman the Rangers have in the system that hasn't even really played in the NHL that's probably going to get an opportunity in the fall. And that's including Braden Schneider and Keandre Miller, who are already up with the big club. So the Rangers have a lot of young players to kind of play around with, both on offense and defense. Despite the fact they've traded a lot of draft picks and prospects, they do still have a nucleus of young players that are going to be coming up even next season. So that's the positive for the Rangers. Now let's get to some of the negatives. Now, of course, the negative is, there's a dilemma in terms of the cap space and the amount of mobility they really have this summer. You have a lot of guys here that are a little bit older, and they have a lot of no movement and no trade clauses, which really makes it difficult for the Rangers to really make any moves. You look at the list of no movement clauses on this team. Jacob Trouba has a full no movement clause. Patrick Kane has a no movement clause. Barclay Goodrow has a no trade clause. Same thing for Tarasenko. And Vincent Trocheck, Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, and Artemi Panarin all have a full no movement clause. So it's going to be very difficult to move really any of those guys on that list, and I just really don't see them going anywhere. And then that kind of leaves you with, who else would you even really consider trading that doesn't have a no movement clause? Well, you're probably not trading Hedel. You just signed him. You're probably not trading Kakko. I'm a little bit more skeptical of that, but I don't think they will do that. He's still got another year on his deal, a really good contract, and he's an RFA next year, so they have a little bit of control. Probably not the guy they're looking to move. And Alexis Lafreniere and Jimmy Vesey, they're probably not moving those guys. On the back end, they're not trading Adam Fox, right? He's a Norris finalist. They're not going to be moving him. So that really only leaves you with a guy like Ryan Lindgren or Braden Schneider that you could realistically even consider moving. And do they want to move on from a guy like Braden Schneider or Keandre Miller? I don't think that's the case either. So the Rangers are in a really odd spot here with the way this team is built up, and that's going to get us to the Gerard Gallant situation in a minute. But this kind of shows you why, listen, it's easier to fire the coach and bring in a new coach than trying to move some of these star players and to completely revitalize this roster. I hate to say it, it's kind of the easy fix. And it's not really fair to a guy like Gallant, but that's kind of the business. That's how things work. It's easier to move him and bring in a new coach than trade an Artemi Panarin or to trade a Trouba or what have you, to make changes to the roster. So that's kind of the dilemma here with the Rangers. Now, with that said, you look at this roster, and some of the criticism of this team is this is a really talented team, a ton of skill, but they kind of have three lines of top six players. Meaning, and you look at even last year's Rangers team, right? And again, this is from last year. Some of these players didn't even have great seasons this year. So it's easy to say, oh, we could have had this guy, we could have had that guy. But you look at like an Andrew Kopp, right? You saw what he did with the Rangers last year. He was a perfect fit for the Rangers with last year's group. He was a perfect fit. He slotted right in on that third line. He was a pain in the neck guy to play against. Could jump into the top six if you needed to. More of a shutdown guy. And the Rangers don't really have that right now. Now, I think they are capable of that. I think Trocheck is there's more potential to tap out of him in terms of his two-way game. Yes, he was able to score some goals and put up some points for the Rangers, but I think they need him to also be a little bit better defensively, and he's been able to do that in his career in Carolina and Florida. So it's not like Trocheck is foreign to being a good penalty killer and a good two-way player. I just think we need to see a little bit more from him next season in that regard as a shutdown guy. Now, if that's not the case and you're saying to yourself, well, he's not really a shutdown center, well, then what do? Because you need to do something there. Does that mean bringing in a Pierre-Luc Dubois? Listen, we saw him in the playoffs this year. He was a pain in the neck to play against in that Winnipeg Jets series against the Golden Knights in the first round. He was a horse. And as much as Ranger fans have talked about wanting to bring him in, I kind of get why. Because he is a guy that, maybe during the regular season doesn't shine and, isn't the best player. And maybe New York Post will be posting stuff how, our new acquisition, Pierre-Luc Dubois, isn't doing enough. But come playoff time, he's the kind of guy that shows up when they're playing Baba O'Reilly for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's when Pierre-Luc Dubois is in his truest, best form. And I think that the Rangers would be looking to add a guy like that. But again, what's the price going to be? Is it a Kakko or a Lafreniere or their first-round pick this year or next year? There's a lot to be considered there for the Rangers. So they'd have to be doubling down on what they already have there. And again, with the limited cap space, you're going to have to move somebody out. Is that Orion Lindgren? Because he's got $3 million. He'll be an RFA next year. I know the Rangers really like him. He's a really good defenseman. But again, you've got some guys in the system like Robertson and Emberson that are going to make it really difficult to kind of say no to freeing up. And Zach Jones, that's the third one I was thinking of. You're going to be able to free up some cap space, and you have three defensemen at this point that you should really be looking at in Hartford. With a good playoff run in the AHL, you're probably looking at least one of those guys, if not even two or maybe all three of them, getting in the Rangers lineup at some point next season. So, I love Lindgren. I know a lot of Ranger fans love Ryan Lindgren. But if that $3 million is maybe what allows you to get a Pierre-Luc Dubois, is that a move you're willing to make? And I think most Rangers fans would say yes. And especially with the emergence of a guy like Keandre Miller this summer, I think it's going to even allow even more flexibility. Behind Trouba and Fox, you've got Keandre Miller as your third defenseman, and now you've got the young guys. You've got, depending on what you do with Nico Mikkola, you've got another year of Braden Schneider on his entry-level contract, and you have to re-sign some of those other younger guys coming off of their entry-level deals like Emberson and Zach Jones. We saw a little bit this year, as well as Matt Robertson. So I think, excuse me, if I'm a Rangers fan right now, I'm not really that concerned about the team. There's not going to be a ton of changes to this team. And we'll look back in 3 months from now and say, Kevin, you were dead wrong. But I just think that this Rangers team, they're going to do everything they can to keep the guys they already have there. And unless they're really looking to make that big move, cap space-wise, they have to do something, and I think somebody's going to have to become expendable. I know Barclay Goodrow has a modified no-trade clause. That's $3.5 million. I think they're going to try and move him. That's $3.5 million to keep a guy like Lafreniere next season, or to add to a Keandre Miller bridge contract. It comes at a point where you kind of have to make sacrifices. Now, they're also going to free up around $1.5 million because Yaroslav Halak's money comes off the books this summer. He'll probably retire at the ripe young age of 37, 38 years old. But that also allows Hartford Wolfpack starting goalie Dylan Garan to become the backup behind Chesty and Igor Shesterkin alongside next season. So the Rangers have a pretty good group here. But again, then comes the question, what do you really do here? What kind of players do you look to add if you're going to go that route? They're going to need to get younger and a little bit faster. So I think that a guy like Patrick Kane doesn't really fit the mold of the Rangers. And I think they like Tarasenko. I think they're going to do everything they can to keep Tarasenko there. The problem is, though, he was good this season for the Rangers, but he's had injury problems, especially in St. Louis. And there's a guy that if you're going to give another, he's 31 years old. He's on the wrong side of 30. You kind of wonder, how long of an extension does he want? Does he want a 5-year deal? Does he want a 1 or 2 year deal? That's a little bit easier to stomach than that 5 or 6 year extension. So those are the questions that the Rangers are going to need to figure out. Chris Drury's going to have to probably decide, Do we give a guy like Tarasenko a longer term, maybe a 5 or 6 year deal at a lower cap hit per season? Or are we willing to sacrifice giving up the cap space now, giving him maybe a little bit more per season, but maybe only a 2, maybe a 3-year deal max? That's going to be the decision that Drury and the Rangers staff is going to have to make this summer on Tarasenko. I think it's kind of a certainty that Patrick Kane leaves. The fact that the Rangers went out of their way to bring back Tyler Mott, I think they're going to try and make it work for Tyler Mott. He's been a really good just bottom 6 glue guy. But then again, he really wasn't that good for them in the playoffs. We really didn't notice him. We didn't hear his name all that much. So I don't really know what I even think of a guy like Mott. So I think it's going to be interesting for the Rangers. There's a logjam at the top, and there's already the rumors about, shout out to Talkin' Habs. He's a really good YouTube channel for the Canadians. Make sure to check him out. But I think that the Alexis Lafreniere rumors to a team like Montreal are going to start to circle. You wonder about Capo Caco's future with the Rangers. There's a lot of questions here, and you kind of wonder if they want to bring in a guy like Brennan Othmann next season. Where is he going to play? If they keep Tarasenko and Kakko and Lafreniere and Kreider and Trocheck and Panarin and Zibanejad, you get what I'm saying here. There's not much room in that top 6, ideally, for a guy like Othmann next season. And unless they create that roster spot for him, it depends on the philosophy. Should he earn a top 6 spot and start his career in the bottom 6, or should he already kind of be given that spot? And there's reason to believe maybe he should be given that spot because of the Rangers' cap situation. They may have no choice but to give him a top 6 spot because they have to move out some salary here this summer. So it's going to be an interesting dilemma for the Rangers. I'm not really that concerned, though. I think the Rangers are a really good hockey team. They're going to be bringing in a new head coach. That's no real surprise to anybody. And I hate to say, it's not even Gallant's fault. I think it's just the circumstance that this is New York. You really don't get much leeway. Plus, the Rangers can't not make a move. And I don't think they're going to, the fact they made this move makes me believe it might be a fairly quiet summer for the Rangers. Excuse me. I do think it will be a fairly quiet summer for the Rangers. You might re-sign Tarasenko. You're going to probably try and get a deal done for Lafreniere and Miller. Hopefully bridge contracts for maybe another 3 or 4 year deal for each of them. And we might see a new goalie behind Shesterkin, which is going to be kind of interesting because Shesterkin had a really good season. And, maybe he didn't start off the way he necessarily would have liked. But, you can't blame Shesterkin for the playoffs. A lot of guys were really, I feel bad for Shesterkin, I think is what Trouba said in the press conference at the end of the season for the locker cleanout. The Rangers had high expectations this year. They gave up a lot of assets. They went all in it this year, and they came up really short. And I think the theme of this summer is we need to build a team, not just get the best player available that wants to come here. We need to build an actual team. And that means more than just bringing in the top players in the league. You got to build guys that fit their roles. You need a shutdown center. You need shutdown penalty-killing players. Those are the type of assets that the Rangers need. They need to get a little bit better on 5-on-5. They're a great power play team, no doubt. Chris Kreider in front, Zibanejad and Panarin with the one-timers, really lethal power play. But we kind of saw that on 5-on-5. For most, really, since the new Rangers era, really since 2020, with this current core, they do struggle on 5-on-5. And I think that's something that needs to get addressed a little bit. Again, maybe Tarasenko helps them out in that regard. But again, he's 31 years old. This is an aging core, right? You look at some of these guys. Panarin, 31. Zibanejad, 30. Kreider, 32. Trocheck is the youngest guy, quote-unquote, in the core at 29 years old. Tarasenko, 31. So, when you kind of look at that group, you do kind of ask yourself, where does this Rangers core stand? Specifically up front. I think on the back end, they're fairly safe. Trouba gets a lot of money. You do wonder, do they even consider even asking about that a year after giving him the captaincy? There's a lot of questions that are going to be on in New York. Unless they're willing to make that kind of big splash trade, I think it's going to be a fairly quiet summer again for the Rangers. I just think they got up against a bad opponent in the Devils that was just quicker than them, that had the young guns. And let's be honest, the Rangers were tired. they kind of looked like it in this series, and maybe just a new coach is what they need. But there's definitely some little assets here and there, some little details that Drury, who took a lot of praise at the deadline for some of the moves he made. Unfortunately, this team came up short of their expectations. Maybe even, now we're going into this coming season in 2024. It's going to be officially 30 years since the 94 Stanley Cup championship in New York. It's going to be 3 decades since the Rangers brought a Stanley Cup to the Big Apple. And there is going to be questions going into next year. Are the Rangers going to be able to finally break that streak? Guys, that's it for today's video. Let me know what you think down below of the New York Rangers. Do you think of the new head coach situation? Who would you like to see in there? Because apparently Joel Quenneville is off the table. I do wonder about a guy, depending on what happens with the Devils, if we see this take a little while. Look at a guy like Andrew Burnett, who is an assistant in New Jersey. He was a really good coach down for the Panthers at the end of last season. So you wonder what's there. I also look at Peter Laviolette. That's a name we've heard floated around the Rangers. So you kind of look at a guy like that. But let me know what you guys think. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. And I'll see you again next time.